All righty. Good morning, everyone. This is very short notice. I tried to get some social media information out there because, as I said, very short notice. We were doing a little test and we're going to just hop right into it. Everything went well. So here we are. Today, if any of y'all have read any of Mr. Plaster's books, especially Glare, I apologize today. Secret Commandos. This is Mr. Plaster's personal tour book that he wrote, not the overall SOG book, the first one. You will recognize our guest today, Mr. Mike Cryer, better known as Elf. I believe he was a lieutenant flying at that time, and I meant to ask offline what you went to lieutenant, and he was around two of our past guests, Mr. Glenn and Mr. Paul's unit, the 20th TASS. We'll hear about some of that. But if you've read his book, you will notice his name in a lot of big incidences in not only SOG history, but the personal history of Mr. John Plaster and CCC overall. I've heard a lot about him, been beating the bushes trying to get ready for today. And I think we're going to have a good show. So we've got none other than Mr. Mike Cryer, then lieutenant, who was OV-10 pilot, and he flew the likes of John Plaster, Lowell Stevens, Ken Carpenter, Larry White, and a few other well-known SOG men that we know and cherish from our readings and studies. So without further ado, I'm going to hand it off to Mr. Mike and let him introduce himself to you guys, and we'll get it started. So, Mr. Mike, the floor is yours, sir.
All right. Thanks, Bud. Well, thank you for Paul and getting together with me. It's kind of interesting when you mentioned going back, and my dad was in P-40 training when my mom was pregnant in Florida, and he sent mom home because he didn't know when he was going to get, sent overseas. And unfortunately for him and his career, he didn't get a chance to get into the big one. But I was born in Ohio in February of 1945, so I'm a tail end of the greatest generation, even though I consider myself a boomer. From there, we were, of course, a military family. We traveled here and there, and Jan, and getting into how I got into the military in 55, 56 time frame. There was this small men's school starting up out in Colorado Springs called the Air Force Academy. And I thought that seemed like a high potential project for me to try and get into. And as things worked out through junior high and high school, I was able to get an appointment after a year at Ohio State. And you'll probably notice in the background, there's a few Buckeye paraphernalia and even a coffee cup here in the front. Based on that experience. And, upon graduation from the academy, went to pilot training at Randolph Air Force Base. And then, unfortunately, I had an incident with a young man and his friends taking a blind date home. And I ended up getting a blowout fracture from that incident. But managed to maintain my pilot status and washed back a couple of classes, and was very fortunate to get the OV-10 as my assignment to Vietnam. So that's pretty much my background. I ended up there. The other part of the story is you went from one location to the other. One of the little notes that I sent to Bud was something I wrote in 1999. Called Ode to the Commander. When I was sitting in my intel briefing, at Cameron Bay on the 24th of June in 1970, I'm kind of wandering off, as you will, during intel briefings, and I look up on the wall and I see my roommate's name, Lieutenant Russell E. Voris, and I go, well, he's already gotten a DFC and I haven't even made it in country yet. Unfortunately, the top of that board was KIA, and we now have a lacrosse award in his name at the academy that's given out each year. So from Cameron, I went up to Da Nang, and sitting in Da Nang, and I ran into a couple classmates at the exchange, and they said, "Mike, do whatever you can to get to play coup." Well, as it turns out, very similar to my appointment to the academy, which was Delbert Latta told me at the time he had two highly qualified candidates, and both of us wanted to go to Air Force. And would I like to join Annapolis? And I said, "No, sir, I don't want to land on a boat." He told me the next phone call at my dorm in Columbus was, we flipped a coin. Well, the same thing happened at Da Nang. In order for me to get to play coup, there were two of us left. One was going to be Da Nang and one was going to be play coup, and he flipped a bottle cap. And I won. I got to go to and work with this group of wonderful men. So I don't know where you want to go from there, Bud.
So you mentioned because as you've probably seen, we've had strictly well, not strictly, but the majority, I'd say 98% were men on the ground. So when you get to, I forgot where you said you went to flight school, but when you got to flight school and everything, were most of the guys said that we've spoken to did not want to go the jet route, one reason or another. Were you one of the guys that wanted to go jet and decided later on or something happened and you went with FACing, or were you one of the guys that wanted to get low and slow and get amongst the action?
Well, that's an interesting question. By the time that I was finishing up in the 70s, the drawback had actually started, and so there were very few fighters per se, and the only fighters available were A7s, and so I was able to, I was like number 5 in my class, and I was fortunate that a couple of the men ahead of me either wanted transport or trainers and didn't want anything to do with Southeast Asia. So again, luck of the draw, there was an OV-10 available, which I took as my assignment.
Wow, that's it's really neat to get to go through, because we've had some guys from 1969 to 70, and then you and Mr. Glenn and Mr. Paul in that 70-71 time frame. But I think even Mr. Glenn or maybe Mr. Paul mentioned there for a bit when they were doing interdiction missions. They were in an O2, and it's interesting to get to hear you guys describe what it was like if you had any experience with the O2 to getting to the OV-10. And it was from maybe it's your words in Mr. Platzer's book, but it's, the O2's the trusty, reliable Ford truck workhorse. The OV-10 was the Ferrari sports car with all the bells and whistles.
Well, we didn't have a lot of bells and whistles, but we were a lot quicker than the O2. You look back and you see what they're flying today, or not even flying it. We didn't have much, too many bells or whistles, so to speak. Oh, I'm buffering. Oh, you brought that up. Yeah.
And is that how much faster was that? I mean, I know it's got to be quite a bit with the output going right there on the motors, but how much faster could you get in the O2s were going?
Well, I really don't remember what the O2. I'm sure the O2 couldn't probably hit over 150.
Yes, sir.
We were capable, I guess, of up to 250. It's been a long time. I don't remember many of the specs.
If I remember correctly, I think that's what Mr. Frank Doherty told us, that it was around 150. If you get lucky, you might get something, get some wind help or what have you, but it wasn't much faster than that. It was literally low and slow. So that is interesting to see. And a lot of people, including myself, didn't realize, and I've got, sorry about not speaking to the microphone. I need to say better about that. I've got something I'll cover later, but the thing about the Bronco is that that most people may not know, or a lot of people don't know, is that it's the increased in output with the white phosphorus, and y'all, if I'm not mistaken, actually had a little bit of offensive capability with machine guns in it. And either did y'all actually have warheads or just strictly Willie Peter marking rounds?
We had 4 pods of rockets, and we generally carried 2 pods with HE and 2 pods with the markers white phosphorus, and then we had 4 M60 machine guns.
4, good Lord have mercy. That's a big output compared to the old O2, to where you'd get lucky if you could hang out the window with a Car-15 or drop grenades or something. Wow. So when you first, shall we say, when you get to, where did you first land in the country of Vietnam when you came in, you said?
They brought us in through Cam Bay.
Cameron,
And
okay.
That's where we were for the intel briefings, in briefings, and that they brought us from the Philippines. We spent a week in the Philippines for again survival school, and then into Cam Bay, and then from there they filtered you out to the various bases, and like I said, again, my assignment, and of course it was related to the OV-10, being primarily used in the jobs in Laos in the Ho Chi Minh Trail.
Before I jump ahead there, we've had the opportunity to ask a few, not a lot, considering we haven't had all that many. What was jungle school like for you? Did you find it did it boost your confidence? And God forbid the account in the incident you went down, you felt a little that you may have learned something to keep you alive? Or
I think the main thing you learned, because again, I was fortunate enough the night they put us out, that whatever backtrack I had done off of a trail and into the weeds, you had 3 bags of rice, and if they found you, then you had to cough up a bag of rice. And for whatever reason, and usually if one guy found you, you were done. He would tell 2 others where you were located. But apparently I had done a good enough job of getting off the trail and under a bush that only one guy found me. So I only lost 1 bag of rice. But the main thing that they taught us was exactly that: is number one, you want to get rid of your chute and your paraphernalia and get yourself as far away from that area as you can. And then, in spite of being armed with a 6-cylinder 38, you might want to find a good place to hide until recovery opportunities came up. And that's always one of the side stories I do tell. When Art Moxon, we talked about him a little bit in our preview, and when he got shot down the first time, he was so impressed with himself that he'd gotten out of the chute and moved off and found a good hiding place, and he started reaching into his flight suit pocket for a smoke. And he said, that's really, really dumb. And so he didn't
stop that immediately. Good. Thank God. And sadly, he had another one that he didn't feel too good about on that second one.
No, he ended up in a bomb crater, if I recall right, and sliding up and down the mud. Thought he was going to end up drowning, but did manage to get out, and of course was rescued the second time.
And I mean, like you said, that was pretty close, not only close in time, but it was also, if I remember correctly, fairly close to where the previous shoot down had happened. So it was kind of strange how all of that was all in the same time frame area and all that. Just
right.
Wow. So when you get to Vietnam, you would land at Cameron. Mr. Paul mentioned his trail interdiction work. Were you immediately sent over to the 20th, or where did you go for your first assignment, and what was that first assignment?
Yeah, I was that. Like I said, I went up to Da Nang, and they flipped the bottle cap, and I ended up down at Pleiku. And interestingly enough, of course, you have to get 50 hours of flight time before they let you go on your own. And so we did some of the shuttle work. And here's another, irony of my tour is my very first flight with a captain in the back seat. We're out doing a VR, and we get the report back that one of the fellows had dropped off his rider at Duco, but it ended up crashing on takeoff. And so that was my very first mission, where we have a KIA, and again, don't remember whether I got to make the landing at Duco or it was done from the back seat, but that was my introduction to the Prairie Fire mission.
And Duke, excuse me, guys, try and silence that every time I can. And Duco, guys, if you don't know, is mostly in the Daniel Boone CCS AO. It's, as a matter of fact, Duco was a what you would know now as a mobile launch site, where they had a chase medic, a AST like Dick Thompson was up north, to plan out the insertion, extractions, and all of that. So I recommend you read up on Duco.
I may have misspoken. It might have been Docto, not Duco.
Oh, well, Docto is
closely associated with us.
CCC, yes, sir. It probably was Docto, the little old airstrip with the wood buildings.
Right.
Yep. Very historic, and doing the same thing there. As a matter of fact, that's where the 173rd had worked when they were in the Highlands before they got pulled out after I think Operation Junction City. So a lot of history there. Not only Duco, but also Docto, but especially for Docto, of you men that served at CCC. So we kind of picked up from Mr. Glenn and Mr. Paul about, they're chugging along, doing their work, not really looking for anything or snooping around for any extra work or more interesting work until I believe it was Glenn may have shot a truck up one afternoon with some white phosphorus, and it made the rounds or what have you. And one day, one of the SOG men came over and said, we think we like your style. We'd like you to think about coming to fly. Can't really tell you about it until you come over and see if you want to do it. And then after that, you can get the full skinny. Did that kind of happen in your situation, or how did that come about?
Yeah, I don't really know what the process was. I just, know it about 6 months into my tour. I got there and started flying like July. And then in December, I was asked if I wanted to join the Prairie Fire operation, and thought that sounded like a good thing to do and help out the effort. And I think, as I told you in our preview, part of that initiation was you had to meet up with the guys over at Camp Holloway, or the medics. There was this drink. They were the Panthers, and you had to drink a glass of Pantherpus. And I thought, with my drinking skills, that there was absolutely no problem. Chugged down my glass and was standing there, and just like everybody else who had forgotten whatever they put in that thing, they also added a little emetic to make sure that you hit the screen door and went flying outside to relieve yourself with a volume of your drink that you just consumed. Tricky, those guys,
You gotta watch your back and front at all times around those nefarious characters.
Right.
Oh man. That kind of reminds me of, we've got one of the CCC Hatchet Force men, Mr. Terry Cadden, back with us, and Joseph Woody Woodard, who was with the Pink Panthers, the 361st, who helped you guys out, the Cobras. He's with us. And I think they've also got a pretty interesting drink concoction that either they do to break you in, or that you got to drink it before you can get out. That I can't remember what the name of it was, but pretty interesting. Oh, Woody said he made that batch of the Panther piss you drank. There you go. I knew something about that. Now it's been so long since me and Mr. Woody spoke. Which Mr. Woody, I'm gonna end up calling you this week. But I love hearing about that. All the strange concoctions that the guys had. It seemed like Recon had a concoction. All of the air crews had their own concoctions. The grunts had their strange concoctions. It's funny what you guys were doing. This kind of be loose flowing and all of that. We're getting a few questions on the on your aircraft since we were still speaking about them. RL64 would like to know, Mike, how often did you find yourself using the 60s during your operation, assuming as a fact you relied heavily on the Willie Pete and HE rockets? And what was your opinion of their effectiveness in the field?
Well, I only had one early on when I was a VR FAC. I found a couple guys walking up and down the hill by where our dog's head was, and I armed up and I'm chasing these guys down the road, and I'm calling Hillsboro. I've got troops in the open, et cetera. And shortly after, George DiGiovanni pulls up, just happened to be with John Plaster, and he says, "Get your butt out of there. There's a 50 cal at the top of that hill. It's hosing you every time you make that pass." So I had probably fallen into the trick of a little flak trap that they were using, those guys, kind of as bait for me to roll in. And of course, in being a young, brave lieutenant, I came back later and I said, I'm going to pull the old Japanese trick. I'm going to come at them from out of the sun, and they're not going to. Part of the OV-10's problem, other than was we're fast and quick, but we were loud. And of course, I got like 500 yards out, and it opened up again. And the young man in the back seat, it was one of his first missions to this day, says I tried to kill him on his first flight. And then of course in the Prairie Fire, the double Prairie Fire, we used them. I think they were only effective from the standpoint that we were there with something, and probably a little more firepower than a GAR 15 out of the window. But I only used them that I can remember on those two occasions.
That's amazing. And like I said at the beginning, I really didn't even know till finally speaking to you, Mr. Paul and Mr. Glenn, that that y'all had the 60s in the on the OV-10, and that's just outstanding. And especially to hear about having 4 of them in there, that's crazy. Kyle's curious, did the Bronco have some pretty good aerobatic abilities? Did you guys ever play around in them?
Yeah, we were known. One of the things, and it may have been what caused the incident at Dak To, was we were kind of expected to do something when we dropped our rider off to help the morale and performance. And if we try and do a barrel roll or aileron roll or something on our departure.
I love that. And that's actually, while we're kind of talking about some crazy stuff, that we'll be kind of all over the place with it being loosey-goosey here, but that's what kind of makes it fun. We all hear about some of the pilots, whether fixed wing or the helicopter guys, kind of wanting to see what it's like to ride on strings. And those of y'all that have read the book might remember seeing a group of pilots one night deciding after a party that they're gonna want to experience what it's like to ride strings. You happen to be one of those pilots. Can you tell us what your experience was like riding strings?
Well, you're gonna later on show the photo from the 1970 Christmas party when we were invited up to the country club. And again, the guys decided to ply us with excess alcohol. And of course, your reasoning and understanding of what you're about to do is limited at that point. And luckily for the guys that I rode the string home for, I was the guy on the bottom, because once again, spinning around at high velocity for 30 miles ended up in a loss of my Christmas dinner.
Oh, that's one thing, and I'm glad every time we have someone on we'll mention it, because guys really don't realize, and I wouldn't have think out it. Here you are in Vietnam, the humidity, the heat, all of it is just absolutely ridiculous. But when you get up, a few thousand feet or whatever, and you're either underneath a Huey or a CH-53 or whatever, and it's haul and tail, I mean, you can get icicles, and you can go into hypothermia like that if you're soaking wet up in the mountains leaving Laos, if they get up high enough. I mean, I've spoke to men that broke icicles off their uniforms when they landed. So that's just crazy to me. And kudos on you guys for actually wanting to experience what it was like to ride, because I don't know of many people that would even behind little courage juice that would still be man enough to do that. So kudos to y'all for doing that. That's pretty hardcore.
There is a phrase that goes with that: young and dumb.
Absolutely. Mr. Perry said at 3,000 feet on the strings, it was close to freezing.
I'll be darned.
Gosh almighty. Just another thing that just utterly amazes me about the whole organization, what y'all were doing back then. Just wild stuff. I wanted to read something, because Mr. Larry had mentioned this here recently, because I try and learn as much as I can about the the Covey riders that flew that rode with you guys. And you had mentioned a minute ago that they would go back to play coup. And from what I've gathered, the guys would stay on. You guys would stay on station as long as you could. Y'all go back to Khartoum most of the time, where the primary Covey rider would report to the LSO launch site office, and before he was stood down for the night. And then the secondary or backup Covey rider would be the one that would actually join you, fly back to play coup that night, sleep at the 20th TASS bunks and all of that, and y'all would get a straight leave out that morning, flying out of play coup to start missions.
Right. That was the primary reason that something like that would happen. Either the guy had the short straw and he had the late mission, and then he had the early mission the following morning, or we drop the afternoon rider off at Khartoum and pick up the morning fella and bring him back, to stay at play coup. And I think I told you that as long as you brought that situation up, is we knew, and the guys were again so professional that we would bring them up to the officers club, because going to the NCO club was not a good idea. There would be some other young fellow that would want to challenge one of these men, and that was not going to result in a good outcome for anybody. And so they would have dinner with us, if they wanted, and then they go back to their room and be ready for the morning mission the next day. But we had a squadron commander at one point that said, well, we can't let those enlisted men in the bar anymore. And one of our captains armed up and damn near killed him, because of the service that these men had provided, and certainly were respected by all of us to be a member of our team and our family.
Holy moly. Yeah, I mean, and speaking a little bit before we start getting into some of the nitty gritty and stuff that a lot of people are interested in, one more little lighter side of things. And you've actually sent us a great photo. Could you speak a little bit about, especially when you got there, what the Covey Country Club was there at Khantoum, and what would go on at the Covey Country Club. Clearly, the name implies a lot, but what was that?
Well, their facility was a little bit more elaborate than ours. Ours was our one room in our hooch. Of course, we had a club as well, which was all part of the Air Force image. You don't, and we actually had a flag and a 5-iron and a golf ball, because you don't have a Air Force base without a golf hole and an officers club and an NCO club. But Covey Country Club, the only experience I had with it was that particular night that we were there for Christmas, when they invited a group of us up, to visit, and so that was my main experience. The stories in John's books cover much more what their relationship was and what it meant to them, and where they gathered. Yep, there we are. And now this fella on the left, standing up, Jim Roper. Quick story about him. You may have heard the name. I don't know whether you've had a chance or tried to get a hold of him to interview.
Would love to speak to him.
Yeah, he became my handball opponent after Lieutenant Eberhardt left. And one evening, Jim and I decided, again, under the influence of this young man, still probably today could recite the Budweiser slogan without even looking at the beer bottle or the can. But he and I decided one night it was time to go let our loved ones know that we were going to go volunteer for Raven. And we go down to the Mars line, and I call home, and I said, "Hey, hon, how are you?" She says, "Oh, I'm fine. How are you? Over." I said, "Well, I got this excellent opportunity over where I can make double pay over by working with the CIA over." And she goes, "Do you plan on ever meeting your daughter?" And of course, they never would have taken me as a married guy with a kid. But Roper did manage to volunteer and has written a book about his exploits. Very interesting and exciting.
That's one of the crazier things I think I've heard. There you are already doing. I would argue. I mean, the Ravens was the most dangerous, but at any given time, this could rival it on their worst day as well. Because, and this is a great photo, by the way. I love the war medallions and y'all's party suits. Are you in this photo?
No, I took anything that you got for me. I took the pictures.
Excellent. Okay, so you are there. Great. And I love Lowell's. This is all Lowell Stevens decorations. The fridge I'll show you all in a minute. The skulls with the aviators and such. And this is actually a famous Thai model that Lowell, I think, met in Okinawa and was able to get this painted on. I think it's vinyl. But great digs nonetheless, and a lot of crazy stuff, debriefs, parties, talks, and all of that would go on. But so there you are, you're already flying SOG missions, or Prairie Fire, shall we say, and you're thinking of upping the ante and going over to Laos up country and flying Raven operations.
Thought about it, but as it happened several times, being married to my lovely bride, she has one-liners that go throughout our life that I have to. Okay, I got it. Yes, dear.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. Wow. That's so crazy, man. That is so crazy, because we had a Air America guy on recently that had some contacts with the Raven gentleman, and boy, oh boy, every day was a wild one for them. I mean, just crazy. Terry, on returning from the hospital in Japan, he says, "I ended up in Pleiku and hooked up with one of CCC's FACs. He treated me to a steak dinner, and in the morning flew me straight to Khantoum." Wow. Seems like the recon men and the hatchet force men had a really outstanding affection and love for you pilots. I mean, what we always hear from the guys on here that if it wasn't for you guys, a lot of them would still be in Laos.
Most professional people I ever worked with.
It's unbelievable. And that word right there strikes a note that makes me want to ask this question. Guys, if y'all have got any questions, bring them in while we've got one of the good ones here with us. When you're first brought over, shall we say, to the dark side flying Prairie Fire operations, and you've got a John Plaster or Larry White sitting behind you in the Bronco, both of them experienced at the game. You've been flying, but maybe not in the high pressure, high stakes situation of Prairie Fire operations. What is it like that first time you are getting on station when, shall we say, the proverbial doo-doo's already hit the fan and y'all are coming into something hot and heavy? And what's that like for you as a first time?
Well, I don't have a first time recollection. I just know that with that ability in the back seat, my primary function, again, was coordinating and I love on the tape or anytime, and I appreciate their thing, but getting air power, on station so that when they can hear me, they can hear the Cobras, they can hear an A1, or they can hear an F-100 overhead. That was what we brought, if you will, to the party. Is it brought a sense of control that if things didn't go well, all hell was going to break loose on the folks down below. Sorry about that phone.
It's all right, sir. Don't worry about it. It's fine. I believe this is actually a Bronco pilot in the front, and I think this might be Mr. John Plaster's photo of him in the back seat. Not sure who the pilot is. Could be you, but I thought I'd give people a little point of view of what it kind of looked like with the back seater and what he was looking at with the pilot in the front.
The fact that guy, it looks like, has on a mask. We didn't have any oxygen, so.
Oh, wow!
It might have been died in a fighter.
Wow. Okay, it may have been. Yeah. Wow. I need to check that picture that Mr. Plaster sent me to see what he's got that labeled as. I could have sworn he said he was back seating for OV-10.
Well, he could have been in the back seat, of somebody with the. Yeah, that's an OV-10 right there.
Wow.
The pilot's got no oxygen.
Well, I mean, look at all the controls. I mean, you've got in front of you. I mean, good God Almighty. And is this? I can't remember. The Broncos, the OV-10s, they're ejection seat equipped, aren't they? Or
yeah, it was Martin Baker 000. Matter of fact, one of our pilots tested it. He was coming back from a mission in the weather, and they told him to hold. And in order to get the beeper on your landing gear, you have to put the throttles back in the takeoff and land position, which when they told him to hold for 15 minutes or so, he forgot. And he came down and made an excellent belly landing on the centerline tank, but realized pretty quick that he'd forgotten wheels, and he was headed for the GCA shack. So he ejected on the ground, survived with a broken ankle. So it worked.
Thank goodness. I think I asked you, but you never had any close calls to where you ever thought or ever had to use the ejection or any close calls like that?
No, I was very fortunate. The closest I came was coming back one day from Khartoum, and the thunderstorm that was supposed to have been off base ended up pulling in, and I, similar to Gene, I had to use the radar controlled approach, which their normal thing in a rainstorm was about a half a mile out on final, they'd say radar contact lost. So you were on the tack end center line, and you knew there were a couple pieces of asphalt down there that were 6,000 feet long. So you pressed down, and I made the landing. You know, had I not made the landing, I didn't have enough gas to get back to Khantoum. So
that is, and what is the? Because we know the bird dogs can stay up a good long while. What was y'all's gas burnage rate? How long do you think you could stay with a full tank on station?
Well, we usually were 4.5 to 5 hours.
You know? Wow. Okay, that's got to be comforting. I can't ever imagine it or put myself in that situation, but that's got to feel dadgum pretty good knowing that if you're in it, there's at least going to be a bird over until dark. They can stay for 4 or 5 hours with you. I can't even imagine that. God, let's see.
I told you one time, one of my pre-Prairie Fire missions, I had a former F-105 pilot in the back seat, and we're zigzagging down the road, and all of a sudden, for some unknown reason, the 23s open up on us. You know, we got flak going off on both sides of the road, and I tell Bob, I says, you know, this is probably not going to bother you. You've seen a lot of flak all the time, and he says, oh yeah. When they shot at me, I dropped my bombs and went home. And I said, I know you're going to hang around here for 2 or 3 hours. And we did. We blew up a bunch of stuff. I don't know why we wouldn't have ever seen them if they hadn't. But apparently it was somebody with a wild hair or something thought they were going to protect the truck park. And we found it eventually.
I was just reading it this morning that there was 6 men against 100 NVA. I think maybe Fred Krupa or somebody. I think you and Larry White actually saved their life when they found the truck park and fought off 100 NVA until they could get extracted. I'm trying to remember if that was no. Go ahead.
Is that the April mission? Is that what was it? Do you remember the name of it?
It was around the time of it was after Ashtray, but it was right before he went on his Krupa took out that 100-man raid mission. This was I hope I wrote this down. Double Prairie Fire. No, I don't have it written down. I'll find it and see.
When you mentioned it, I went back in my log book, and what I found was in April of '71, I was with Six Pack. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
And we had 2 flights of Vietnamese A1, because at that time we were totally transitioned. And the interesting thing about that mission was when it was during the burn season, and even after we had the success with the A1s and the team as far as the mission, I had asked the A1s to leave when I was attempting to do and gather information until I really could see on the ground what was going on because of the smoke and the haze. Well, we ended up I all of a sudden look out of my canopy, and there come the 2 A1s about 1,000 feet apart, and I have to fly between them because you don't lose sight of another airplane. If I'd have turned belly up, who knows what, I might have slid into them. So I just went right between them. And of course, there were some vulgar descriptions of their flying abilities and a bit to follow directions. But that's what that was the final part about that mission. I don't know whether that was something that Six Pack remembers or not.
He was telling me quite a few things. There was, gosh, I'm trying to find one, and I'll end up finding in a minute. There's so many, and I hate that Mr. John didn't list it because your name is listed a lot more than just the times he's got it put in the back in the index section. So you're constantly finding stuff. I mean, there's one right here where you're helping RT Illinois out, and I think it's you and Mr. John Plaster, but folks are kind of interested in, especially in 70 and 71, as we're letting some questions come in. Were y'all facing, and you were mentioning FLAC just then, are y'all facing running the whole gambit of AA from what was it, 12-7 to 14, and then 51s or 37s? And then did y'all ever get, I know Mr. Art sadly came in contact with missiles, but did y'all see a lot of missiles or rockets, shall we say, being shot at you guys at this point in time?
No, I was lucky, because I, again, going from June of or July of 70 to June of 71, they really hadn't moved the stuff down yet, and of course it wasn't until later on in 71 and 72 when nothing was going on up north, and they started moving more of that type of stuff down on the trail.
Oh yeah, we've heard from a few guys that were flying. They weren't Prairie Fire, but they were still up on near the DMZ flying missions for the last set of Marine and Vietnamese Marines up there, still holding on. And they said, if you so much as cross the what is it, the Ben Hai that separates Vietnam from North and South Vietnam,
right?
He said if you so much as cross that river even a little bit, within a few minutes you'd be, depending on how far you got in, you could expect rockets, because they had gotten so much stuff down by the border by that point in time. So I've always interested to see if you guys had seen them, and the guys that do see them, what it's like, because they say it's just like seeing a flying telephone pole just coming straight at you.
Then when you mentioned the Ben Ha and the border, that's one photo I didn't send you from our trip in 2019. Is Linda and I straddling the DMZ that was all part of our tour. You get the obligatory photo of one of you standing in the north and one of you standing in the south.
That's great. That's great. I'm gonna end up showing some of those. If we show all the photos we've got today, we'll be here for a while. Ricardo is curious about, did you ever have an experience similar to the Covey bomb dump mission at Ban Bach, Laos, December 1970? I'm not sure the Covey bomb drop mission.
I don't know about that. Could have been something from Da Nang. They were farther north than we were.
Ricardo, if you want to elaborate a little bit more and let us know what went on, maybe we can get a little bit more info and see if he had something similar go on, and we'll figure it out. Mr. Terry said absolutely, but nothing but love and respect for all of our air assets. Absolutely.
Thank you.
I know you guys love them. Great question. Mr. Mike, did you ever get to see Puff the Magic Dragon at work?
Well, he asked in the daylight, but again, that young man, Jim Roper, and I decided, I was the scheduler, that we would be responsible for the New Year's Eve greeting from 1970 to 71. So we scheduled him on the mission that night, and I was his navigator with the starlight scope out the side. And as you hear in the Prairie Fire tape, we decided that the only thing we could do would be drop grenades out the window with rubber bands. The first grenade went off about 3 feet behind the prop, and so we stopped that nonsense real quick. The rubber band came off right outside the window. and
Did you ever hear? I can't remember if
But
this.
but the rest of when you ask about that night, we did get to see a C-130 work the trail quite effectively with their big 40 millimeter guns.
I bet that was a thing of beauty, seeing all those rounds coming out of the sky like that. Those exposure rate photos that the AP or what have you do when they would see them working targets is just amazing. The time lapse, just I mean, putting us around in every, what is it, square yard or every yard of a football field or what have you, just ridiculous. Let's see. Was Gabriel Rodriguez? God, sorry guys. Gabriel Rodriguez would like to know: was there a choke point in Laos where the majority of the airstrikes were targeted, called Death's Gate?
That was quite a bit far up north. That was way up north.
Like Raven Territory North, or
well, I think the Nails actually are the covered that area.
Okay. Were Nails were Nakhon Phanom guys, weren't they?
Right.
Okay. Yeah, then that's definitely north. Mr. Freighter Klingbat would like to know, ask Elf about the 105 who was used to flag. We just covered that. Sounds like he knows you. I don't know if that's a real name or not. That's quite the interesting one if it is. Terry's curious about it. Doc Toe, did you fax top off y'all's fuel tanks at Doc Toe before y'all crossed the fence?
No, we would refuel at home, and I think we could get gas at Khartoum, but I think after the incident at Doc Toe, I think they stopped, dropping people off and picking up there. Our primary was through Khartoum.
Wow. Okay. Did y'all ever have any issues or anything with what we've heard? Some of the officers, some of the and I put that in quotation marks because there were a lot of great officers that ran recon and worked hard, but some of the guys just in there trying to get their name up and get the check mark to move up the chain. Did y'all ever have any trouble with anybody trying to alter y'all's mission or maybe get too over the shoulder of y'all's work that y'all were doing?
No, I never noticed that. Of course, I was a lieutenant and wouldn't have had any input or output on that. Go here, do that, come back. I think I told you the story that the one time I did take a couple rounds was with King Arthur, and I was trying to show him a Ford, and this is when I was, early on in Prairie Fire, trying to show him a Ford that maybe needed, but it was pretty far out, and I was up at like 1,000 feet, and he couldn't see the logs in the river, and I took down to 500 feet, and he still didn't see the logs in the river, and so I finally went down the river, and the only other thing we did that was we checked on a team, but when I got back, I get up to the hooch, I found out I owe a couple of cases of beer because I had forgotten, didn't notice that I had two holes, one in the wing and one in the midsection of the tail. And that was the routine. If you didn't come back and tell them you had battle damage, then you had to provide them with liquid refreshment.
Holy cow. Wow. I know, well, I'll say that because there are two photos that I definitely would like to get a little info on that are interesting. It looks like post airstrike, but let me see with the audience questions real quick before we hop back in. Tired Redneck is curious about the weapon systems the NVA utilized against you guys. Was the RPG? Yes, the RPG was around. Absolutely. How effective did you ever have RPGs shot at you come close? I mean, I know they getting wonky. what was the most dangerous thing to you that you thought personally?
The 50 cals, because again, if there was one of them, there were going to be a couple more. And if we were, it was one of those things in our back pocket, with 4 M60s, you didn't take on a 50 cal because they have the firepower advantage. And normally if they had them set up in a triangle. And so that was, and they had quad 23s that were, pretty scary. The 37s and 50s, 57s were pretty slow. And again, weren't really, they were more a territory thing. But the RPG, I don't know of an RPG ever being fired against me. Like I said, the embarrassing thing of the hole in my airplane was it was an AK-47 round.
I would definitely think they'd be trying to save the RPG for maybe when they got a helicopter to come in.
Right.
For an LZ hit.
Yeah.
Let's see here. Well, since we're kind of getting, we're here at about the hour mark. Could you kind of speak to one of these missions? And a question. Actually, this will come up because it might help lead into the next set of questions. When you were when the doo-doos hit the fan, and you and either six-pack, plaster, or shoebox in the back seat are trying to get whatever y'all can get on station. What was your favorite air asset to help with troops in contact? Was it the slow mover A1E? Was it the fast movers, or what?
No, we were, our group, was all in on the A1. The amount of ordnance, B, the amount of time on station that, and as you hear in the tape, the Cobra pilot did not want me to leave and thought we had A1s overhead because they are the king of the ground
king
support.
of the sky.
Yeah. I mean, they could take a lot of damage if that were to happen. And so even if they were damaged, they could hang around with you. And, not to, obviously the Vietnamese folks that we worked with after Vietnamization were equally as proficient with their aircraft, other than following instructions in English. But in both cases of the KBA with six-pack and the double Prairie fire with John, the Vietnamese A1s were our support and did a super job.
Wow, that's amazing to hear. We hear good things about all the A1E drivers, shall we say? But hearing that the Vietnamese were on station working hard for that double Prairie fire is nice to know. If you wouldn't mind, could you? I know it's a tough subject and the audio's out there, guys. I'll link it. I don't like linking it to this because it's not really something that people just need to listen to all the time or what have you, but it kind of gives a good perspective of the craziness that goes on, not only flying and troops in contact, but a prairie fire emergency. And Mr. Larry White goes into great detail, not only in the book, but when I was speaking to him about what it's like getting a man that either knows he's about to die or he is come close to dying and he's on his way out and still needing help and needing to calm them down the moment they make contact with you, or else they're going to lose it and they'll be of no help for you, and it just goes downhill from there. Could you kind of speak about that morning you and Mr. John got that first call for help? And I believe the first call may have been Colorado with Lurch and Pat Mitchell before Hawaii, if I'm not mistaken.
No, we were working with Hawaii, and I've forgotten from the book who I think Shoebox left right before we got. They were already trying to do that extraction, and they were still taking ground fire and in contact a little bit, but we're in the middle of that, with the Cobras, setting up the pattern for the helicopters to do the extraction. And there's still a lot of ground fire and, a lot of action going on with Hawaii, which was John's old team when we got the first Covey, and then I've forgotten the Tango Papa. We get those first calls, and John is trying to siphon, whether that's who, he's asking Hawaii, if they are making the calls, and they say no. And then when John talks to Pat, and he says, "What's your condition?" We get the prairie fire, and at that point we're trying to figure out. John's trying to get Cobra Lead to take over the extraction so that we can leave there. And my best estimation from the tape, it was about 9 minutes between when we got the first call and when we got on station to help those guys out. And of course, as the tape says and the book says, Mixter was already he and NVA had exchanged RPGs, and he was already gone. And Radio Man was wounded, and he and Mitchell had jumped down in a ravine. And when we got there, we were the first ones to get there. And again, I had the opportunity and was able to help them out, at least with some suppression, with both the HE rockets and the M60s.
God almighty. I mean, I can't even, guys, y'all know how bad it is just from the book. I mean, I've got it dog-eared right here, but if y'all listen to that audio, you can hear it. Reading it is bad enough, but you can hear them literally. It's a whisper. It's a tactical whisper, because if you whispered, the guys wouldn't even be able to hear you. But they're being as quiet as possible, because literally in the next breath, after he says Covey, Prairie Fire Emergency, you start to hear AK rounds and then CAR 15 rounds and grenades going off immediately in the background. And it's a run and gun and get the hell out of Dodge operation from then on out. And like he said, sadly, Mr. David Lurch Mixter was KIA, but the guys actually fought, and Mr. John and Mr. Cryer got all of the other guys out safe and sound, as safe as you can be in a situation like that. And maybe you can help me out. I've heard varying rumors about this. Other men have said they did it, or they may have been a part of it. But from what I can gather, you and Mr. Larry White, Six-Pack, actually were out that next morning looking for David and hoping to get a beeper signal from him.
I was not part of that mission the next day. I don't know. Again, it's where how people's, recollections and write down. As a matter of fact, when I look back at my logbook, John nowhere mentions the F-100s that came in, because that wasn't part of his routine. And the first air I got after we got on station were a couple F-100s who only had their 20 millimeter cannons left, but I was able to spread them around the area, overhead, and again to give the NVA an impression. But the following day, I don't know where or who or how I would have gone, but that wasn't my mission. I don't know exactly who went back with them, to try and find Lurch and bring him out. And again, I think in John's book, they went over this ravine and were hunkered down, and at that point Lurch was only 10-15 meters from them, but the LZ was the opposite direction. And this was one time, as John says, when you're 6'2", 225, it works against you that you've already got one wounded that you gotta help carry over to the LZ, and unfortunately we weren't able to bring him home.
Unfortunately not. And guys, I've spoke to guys, read about guys, they have that talk and say, if I'm dead, if I'm dying and I'm going to be a hindrance for y'all to get out alive, leave me and go. I'll hold them off. Or if they're already dead, that they say that it's my body. Don't risk somebody else dying to come get me. So I know guys still don't, even though they hear that from their teammates and they know they mean it, it's still the ultimate letdown to not be able to get your brother out. So I can only imagine the sad days ahead that all of y'all went through, especially the guys that had gotten close to Mr. Mixter. That's one of the tough ones for all of y'all that were there that in that time frame. Very tough stuff. And I thought it very, very big of you. Like you said, you cleared up. You didn't fly it, but you said you most absolutely would have to help find Lurch. So that's that speaks testament to you men up in the air. Ricardo has a very good questions, and I don't think we've ever asked one of our air assets this. Did you have and what was, if you did, your experience with Navy and Marine air assets? Any differences from the U.S. Air Force support?
The only difference was the weapons, for everybody, again, not to demean any aircraft designs, but the F4 didn't matter whether it was Navy, Marine, or Air Force. Gravity served them well as far as getting bombs on the ground, but as far as accuracy, with the Navy, again, or Marines, the A4 was an interesting little plane. And one of my experiences, as a matter of fact, this was Thanksgiving of 1970, when one of the other fellows in that photo, George DiGiovanni, and I, again, being the scheduler, I took the privilege of scheduling myself the early morning mission before Thanksgiving and the late afternoon return mission on Thanksgiving Day of 1970 from Uban. And again, ironically, it was Art Moxon who stirred up a hornet's nest up at our Dog's Head, which was a choke point for getting supplies across. And there were some pallets and some trucks sitting out in the open that he'd been working on. And so George and I pulled in this flight of Navy A4s, and they had a reputation that rice and beans or trucks weren't their forte. Guns were their forte. And their dive was like 60 degrees. And Lee cleared in hot. He comes in, he says, "Okay, two, you got the guns?" Two's right on his tail. And that's all they did the rest of the afternoon was blow up the guns, using and they were very accurate, from that, using that tactic.
Interested to see on the mission you were mentioning a minute ago. It may have been the double Prairie fire. I think it was the F-100s or maybe it was the F-4s. I'm forgetting now. But after they ran out of their cannons because they only had 500-pound bombs, which was a no-go in that, considering how close the situation was, that y'all actually had them make dry runs and would engage the afterburners to rattle cages or what have you. What effect would that be on the NVA? Would that just blow their eardrums out or scare the bejesus out of them down there with one coming low and just jetting out like that?
Well, in this case, the F-100s were, not only out of bombs, but once they made their passes and they were out of guns, they were out of fuel. So I didn't get to have them make any afterburner passes. They had to head home so they, didn't become a casualty themselves. And I never used that technique as far as afterburners to scare anybody. Normally we had enough, your Cobras with the 40 mic were much more effective than an afterburner.
I was just fixing to say, absolutely. Yeah, they're speaking about the F4s expended their 20 millimeter and had them make some noisy passes to keep the enemy off balance. That's pretty interesting. And then you mentioned getting all the F4s to pickle their bombs, dumping all 24 in in one pass atop a nearby ridge. I mean, I can imagine the explosion y'all got off of them pickling every bomb they had on that run.
Right.
Gosh. This is a good one we haven't covered yet about your personal some personal stuff for you. Could you speak about what you used for your survival gear? Was there a standard operating procedure in place that dictated what you would personally carry, or was that up to you as a personal choice? And did it change over time?
No, I was, as you know, I commented on the picture that's in John's book with me standing by my airplane, you know, and I always carried my bandolier full of 38 ammo. And, you know, when I got home, I thought, you know, that was really a waste of time and weight, because my 6-shooter wasn't about to give me any opportunity to reload against a group of guys with AK-47s. So, but that was my idea, you know, and I didn't change anything. I had radios, you know, and the panels, but other than that, no, I didn't change anything.
Wow. Yeah, we've heard a few of the guys talking about trying to get a car 15 to carry, and realizing that ain't gonna work because they've got it's so small in the cockpit and all of that. Then and the O2 guys would have grenades they'd carry and stuff like that in the gunny sack, or the maybe in a mine bag, I forgot. Trying to see here, trying to find your other. There's the bird picture. I wanted to show people what you look like, considering we were talking about this. There we go, right there with his survival vest. I can only assume all of that is ammo and the likes. There's, I think, pistol rounds. Did you have a Air Force survival knife on you?
You know, I don't remember whether we did or not. Probably somewhere.
I can imagine. I would imagine y'all probably the SOG guys loved those. I know for a fact they absolutely loved those. Those were between those the Marine K-bars, and then gosh, I'm not good with knives. I know the big brands. I'm blanking on the it wasn't the Gerber, it's another one, but those were the 3 bigs. But everyone loved the Air Force survival knife. How often was ERC-10 used by recon teams? Did you always monitor that frequency on the off occasion somebody was running?
No, I'm not. Is that an FM radio?
The emergency survival that they had on their persons. I think it may have.
You know, I don't recall ever getting into that situation. We were always on the FM, you know, frequency modulated radios. I had 2 of those. I had 1 VHF and 1 UHF, and the UHF was the primary Air Force communications. So that's where I had the air assets. VHF, I think, is where the primary, and the FM, of course, the helicopters were communicating on VHF, and then the team would be on the FM radio. And I don't know whether that was an ERC-10 on the ground or not. I don't know that nomenclature.
Very nice. We've got a few more questions, and I thought we'd show off the video, or the video, some of your photos that you sent, because they were wonderful, wonderful photos. Ground fire. Did you ever fly with anyone, without anyone in your back seat, alone, solo flights?
Yeah, your first, you know, like 6 months was pretty much solo. Other than, like I said, I had a captain, getting his time. Even if you were a former F-105 pilot, you had to have at least 5 familiarity missions out there. But my first 6 months was primarily on my own.
Jeez Louise. I imagine you get real comfortable and really get to know not only the area but yourself, being alone that all day and till dusk out there flying alone by yourself. Can probably be pretty lonely until all hell breaks loose, and then you've got way too many voices going on. Oh, interesting. What was the closest you ever became to being completely empty on fuel?
Like I mentioned earlier, that one mission where I had dropped somebody off up at Khartoum, and the weather that wasn't supposed to be at Pleiku moved in while I was on my way down the road. It's only 30 miles, but I signed up for a ground controlled approach, and as was their famous in the rain, they would say radar contact lost. And I said, well, I got a center line down there and some parking lot that's 6,000 feet long. That I got down to about 200 feet and found a runway to land on, but I would not have made it back to Khartoum.
Boy, it's wild hearing how close some of you guys literally. I mean, y'all are running on fumes coming into to land. I mean, good Lord. Jason's just now hopped in. I don't know if we mentioned it earlier, but did you in your time in flying in Vietnam, did you ever come across any MiGs?
No, thank God.
Thank God.
We have one. I think we have one story in our Tip of the Spear, which is a collection of Cubby pilot incidents. One guy got chased by a MiG, and he got way down in the river valley real quick. And at least we could outturn him. We couldn't outrun him, but he got down there and did his sports car thing and got away.
I imagine if they were chasing you and you dropped down, I don't think they could slow down after that initial thing enough to without falling out of the sky to stay with y'all, considering they were jets or what have you.
Yeah, we could probably turn around and go back the other way faster than they could.
Yeah, yes, sir, absolutely. Oh, another good question with Jason. What was your impression of the SOG men you knew? Obviously, they were brave, but did you kind of think they were a little crazy or anything like that? None more so than y'all doing what you were doing, but
no, as I said earlier, they're the most professional people.
That's the understatement of the century. Absolutely. Oh gosh, it's been the honor of my life getting to know you men, both from the air side and the ground side. Just absolutely amazing men. It's God, y'all are living, breathing heroes. Jake B, his grandfather was Captain Steve L. Bennett from the 20th TASS, and I believe he flew Ravens. By chance, do you remember that name? Did you hear of Captain Stephen Bennett? I believe he earned the Medal of Honor.
Yeah, I know the name because of his he essentially saved a Marine pilot who was riding with him, but they landed in the water. If I'm remembering it right, I never met the man, but I'm pretty sure that's who this is.
This is his grandson. Yes, absolutely. Wow. This is the more information than we've ever got. We've tried. He asks every time we have a FAC on, and this is actually someone who's seen. Evidently, you knew him in person, so that's closer than we've got. Several have heard his name.
I never met the man. I just know the story.
Okay. Well, we're getting closer, Jake. We're getting closer. Let's see here. Guys, get some questions in because we're getting low here towards time. We're about to hit the hour and a half mark, and we're not going to hold him too long today. We might have to have him back if something comes up and all of that. But I was going to bring up some photos that you sent. I won't be able to go through all of them, but could you explain what you guys are up to at this point? Looks like you're about to butcher something, or
Well, no, we had a real good relationship with FUCAT. Our first sergeant did, and we would get a load of steaks every now and then, and I was the steak chef.
oh,
That was the attire for cooking steaks.
how many steaks would you cook at a time and get ready when y'all were cooking?
Hey, I forgot how many of us there were, but a case is probably 24 steaks. We just
Wow, yeah, I bet you got dang good, like a conveyor belt of cooking. That's a good question. Did y'all custom make a grill, or did y'all buy a normal grill that you'd buy, or?
I'm pretty sure this. Looking at the materials, you can probably tell it was custom made. There's a old piece of corrugated iron covering probably whatever metal we could find, to make a grill out of.
I'm wondering if that's
But
I
that
can't
was
quite
built
tell that.
probably built. The pit was probably built by one of the Coveys at some point.
Love that. I love your the black boonie too. That's absolutely wonderful. And I have been curious about this. There's two in this set. Let me see if I can get in here. It looks like y'all have hit a dock.
Well, this is again one of those early missions in Cambodia. I think I wrote Stung Treng when I sent it to you, which is actually Laos. But this is Prairie, and I was out, on my own. This is out on the Mekong, and I took the pictures of the boats in September and sent them down to 7th Air Force. And as they finally cleared us to blow them up, because this was a well-known NVA held town, and they didn't figure these boats were sitting there giving Mekong tours anymore. And so in November we got clearance, and Nick Letterly happened to be down at the Intel office when the frag came in, and he came and got me out of bed. So Nick and I jumped in an OV-10, flew out there, and this was the work of a couple of Air Force A-37s.
Oh,
And when one of them dropped napalm on one boat and another one dropped napalm on the other boat, that was it. That's just because they didn't miss. They were like A1s, little jet A1s, but they didn't have the loiter time or the ordnance that an A1 had.
boy, I was about to say that looks dead on. I mean, you even got the outer. It looks like there's several small ones, and then you got one big in the slip and one big in the slip right here. And it looks like he may have threaded the needle and hit two on one with that napalm. I mean, and we know how we've heard from the guys. I mean, it jellies and whatever it touches, it's burning. So that's a heck of a hit right there. And I think, let me pull up this and see if this was maybe the earlier photo you were mentioning. Yeah, wait, gosh, so many good ones here. Sorry, guys. There we go. Or maybe, gosh, this might be if the boats completely burned to the water.
No, this is the other side of the river.
Oh, okay.
And these are just a row of houseboats. So once again, I had F-100s come in with 20 millimeter, and I figured, well, anybody that's heard what's going on across the river probably ought to be gone, and of course this one that's burning, we had a couple of them, that were covered, that isn't normal houseboat reaction. It was full of fuel.
Oh, wow. That's what I was fixing to say. I mean, clearly, if you're in a VC held or NVA acquainted town and all of that, and you're not running or what have you, you're probably going to be a bad guy, either storing something or living right here to where you can get to work and get into the jungle to hunt Americans early in the morning. So that's an interesting target. That's like some of the other early CCC guys finding the port of I hate trying to pronounce his dadgum name, the Cambodian prince Sihanouk.
Sihanouk.
Sihanouk. Okay, I put way too many vowels in there. Sihanouk. They found some great, I believe it was his yachts and all of that, or pleasure cruisers, and I think they may have made a little bomb run on them, which is very interesting. There's some funny stories we've actually gotten from some of the men we've had on talking about some of the runs they made where they found him. And this is actually a very cool tradition that I've only recently found out about, and I believe this is you saying is it called the Finny flight?
Finny flight, and of course the champions don't have anything on us at pouring champagne on people to make their eyes burn.
Yes, sir. You got one eye closed right there, as a matter of fact.
Yeah, and I can't see out of the other one.
So I'm assuming this is black back at Play Coup, and you're literally just got out of the aircraft, and everybody swamps you like you just hit the game-winning shot in the NBA championship.
Yep.
That is wonderful. And did they kind of try and time this out to where maybe everyone can immediately go and y'all have a party, or is that till everybody gets off of work and gets done, and then y'all have a big party for you being finished and all of that later that night?
Much like the Covey Country Club, the airplane part, we had our own little hooch, and the party was continuous. So,
gosh, you guys, I love it. Absolutely love it. Y'all doing the hard work, dangerous work, and doing what y'all can to blow off steam and make sure y'all don't go crazy here. These next two are interesting because I'm not sure if this is a Khantoum. I know the next one is because it's one of our favorite characters, Joe Walker's pet. But this, I'm curious if this is at Khantoum getting ready to load up for a mission.
That probably was the December 1970 Christmas party.
Okay. You're in your party suit there. And I loved y'all's Snoopy patches. Those are the greatest things ever created. And that little sticker or that painting on the country club, the refrigerator that says Covey, any effing Covey, like that guy shouted over the radio as its little tagline at the bottom. It's wonderful. I always get a kick out of asking guys about snakes, whether in the field or not. But here we've got the opportunity for you to tell us about a pet snake. As far as I've learned and known, this was Joe Walker's pet, Georgia, that he got in Thailand.
Yep. And you might notice that my part of the reason that I'm out snake tending is there's a bandage on that right hand, and that was the result of a handball loss to Jim Roper. He wasn't supposed to be able to beat me, and I turned around and hit the door and broke a finger or broke a little bone in my hand, and I flew for about 2 weeks. So the doc came back and he says, "Well, you can't fly with a broken hand." I did. Anyway.
How long were you when the doc finally caught you and got you out for a bit? How long were you down and out without being able to fly?
I think it was about a week. They had to re-break it. And, they gave me the opportunity to go down to for surgery, and I said no. People die in surgery, so they just put a number on it and re-broke it, and it worked.
Holy cow.
Young and dumb incidents.
I was just fixing to say, you tough man right there, having it re-broke. Yeah, I don't think I'd be leaving and going to surgery in the middle of what all was going on. But I believe
That's the whole crew.
I think you're right here.
Yep, that's me.
Yeah, there I think that's you. I believe that's Mr. Paul right
No,
there.
that's Glenn. That's Glenn.
Glenn, and Paul wasn't here yet, if I can
I
remember
don't think he
correctly.
was. Yeah, I don't think Paul was there for that photo.
That's great. This is one of it's in this Jason Hardy book right here, volume 4, with Steve Keever on the front, and that I love that. That's a great one. That's Snoopy on his doghouse back there, and then the Bronco back there, home of the Highland Coveys, 20th TASS. What did OL 201 stand for?
That was just, we were an outpost from Da Nang was the 20th Tactical Air Support Group, and we were,
Outpost 201 or what have you?
Yeah.
Wow. Very, very interesting. I'm so glad I finally got the original of that, because the only one I had seen is sadly is a full page, and it's chopped into 2. So I'm very, very glad to finally get that. Let's see. As we're probably getting ready to close here, if we do photos, we'll be on here way past 2 hours, and we may see about getting you back if we can. But Ricardo is curious, and I'll add on to that. When did you that Finney flight? When did that take place, and when did you officially get orders to get out of Vietnam and get home? And what did you do after Vietnam?
Okay, well, that would have been like 2 days before I went to Da Nang, and I think I told you on the first shoot down of Art Moxon, I meant to have you point him out as well, but I was, in my 2-day stand down, and the squadron commander and maybe the folks up at Pontoon, we were going to put a team out, even though it was pretty far up north. We're going to put a team out to help with the rescue. And again, somebody wrote that we actually got him, but no, I never even got mounted before the HH-53s and the A1s pulled Art out. But when I got back I became an instructor pilot at Williams Air Force Base in Arizona in a T-38. So that was my follow-on assignment.
So is the T-38 is the how would is that the smallest jet they have, or what is the T-38? We've heard it.
T-38 is it. They've done it now. They rebuilt it a couple of. It's getting long in the tooth, but it was the primary jet trainer. And the Air Forces, I think, at this time has gone to a program similar to the Navy, where you do your primary training. They have a new turboprop, which is a lot less expensive to run than the old T-37 was for primary training. And then they hit a fork in the road depending on the guy's ability. He goes towards a crew assignment, or he goes into the T-38 for a fighter assignment. So the T-38 was a supersonic trainer.
Wow. Okay. That's that breaks it down perfectly. I think Mr. Art may be in this photo. Hopefully you can help me. Is Mr. Art the blonde gent back here?
Yep, that's him.
There he is. Okay.
Yep.
I thought I got it. Remember Mr. Glenn telling me that or Glenn and Paul telling him, love the Yankee Air Pirate Jolly Rogers y'all had too. The party suits just can't beat a Prairie Fire FAC's party suit. I mean, there is just nothing like it. I absolutely love it. NKP's got a little special group to where the guys still post some of theirs from Thailand, and God Almighty, they are just out of this world cool. Did people just slap stuff on, or did y'all have special, shall we say, historically significant patches, like a mission or doing something brave earned a patch, or did y'all just slap stuff on at will?
Well, do you have the double photo that I sent?
I do, and unfortunately, I may not have
Transferred it.
Yeah. Which one was the double of? Was it the
Picture of me, and actually there's two. You can see how my party suit.
Oh yes, good Lord, I just found it. I literally just found it. Thank God. Here we go. Sorry about that. That's crisp. Look, it still fits in it. I mean, good Lord, have mercy.
Okay, the background on this is 25 and 55, and you can see how it evolved. And on the right hand side of the 55 picture, you can see my CCC patches, which I didn't have as the brave young VR lieutenant.
And do you I hope you still have that your party suit.
I do, and I actually got into it at age 75. I thought about putting it on today, but I can't sit down in it anymore. It's shrunk over the years.
That just being able to see it like this, as clear as it is, that's amazing. And was this? It looks like you've got the neck lanyard for a reunion. Was this a 20th TASS reunion?
No, that would have been a big FAC reunion.
Okay, wow, excellent. That's amazing. You were still able to fit in it and wear that bad boy, and hopefully, I mean, you a little bit of age, but if people knew you well enough, they could clearly point out, hey, there's Crier or Elf, depending on what they called you.
Yeah.
And I actually just found the color photo that folks might want to see from John Plaster's book. I hate I didn't show that earlier, but that's a great color clear photo as opposed to the book one I had. That's beautiful. December 1970. Aircraft Lieutenant, Aircraft Commander Lieutenant Crier. Oh, that's a danger panel. Gosh, I mean, yeah, that thing definitely looks like the Ferrari compared to the Bird Dogs. And I believe it said in was that the flight room before going out?
Yep, I was duty officer that day. Probably up to some mischief based on what's expression on my face.
No, instead of what me worry, it's what I didn't do anything.
Right.
Oh, there's Mr. Crier right there.
Good grief, where'd you find those?
I have no idea, to be quite honest. I think I may have done a Google search on you and stuff popped up. Was that VMI Military Academy down there?
That's Air Force Academy.
Oh, that's the Air Force when you were a cadet. Good Lord,
Yeah.
have mercy. Wow. Young, and didn't have any idea what was ahead of him. There we go. There's another good little snatch shot of just the guys. There you are again. I think there's Art finally
That's
right
Art,
there.
yeah. Yep, that's Art.
And unfortunately, I think Mr. Glenn's chopped from that one. But let me see if we've got any more questions here. Yep, that's Delta Force stuff I've got for a later event. We have hit our questions, all of that for our viewers at the moment. I know as soon as we get done, I'll instantly start looking at stuff and know I'm forgetting to have asked you multiple questions. Maybe here in the future, if you'd be open to it, we can have you back on again. If you'd like to come talk to us, we'd love to have you.
Okay, no problem.
All righty. I believe we're going to shut it down here. We're pushing right at an hour 45. I like to keep it at hour 45 or 2 hours, or else the crowd gets a little restless and tends to lose interest and leaves us. And I know it's been long enough. We've been sitting here. I actually need to go to the restroom. But is there anything else you'd like to say or close out with?
No, there was one last picture. I don't know whether it made it through. It was the mural from the Hanoi War Museum.
Let me
Did you?
Yes, I've got that, and yes, let me.
And just for all, I don't know who's still out there, but
yeah, here we go. Let me pull it up right.
So we made enough of an impression on the NVA that we have our own little corner. I didn't send you all of. There's mock-ups of guys pushing bicycles down the trail. So there's a little corner dedicated to the Ho Chi Minh Trail. And
that's amazing. And there you are, right there.
Yeah, and then it was amazing that when it went by, I didn't have a chance to grab our guide and come back and get an interpretation about what they said on this particular corner. So I don't know what they thought of us in our responsibilities or not. But I thought that was a nice closing. That we're in the museum.
You made a big enough mark, shall we say, that they felt the need to add the Bronco there to
well, not just the Bronco, the mission. I think this off to the left is probably an A1 ordnance drop. It looks like 50 cals and some 500 pounders. Too bad they didn't get a Huey or a Cobra, because there weren't too many Loaches that came out into the trail.
Their artist was, I think he may have been trying to go with the Huey body, and I think he just he squinched it all up a little too much and went with the Loach body style.
Right.
Let me see. Yeah, that's wonderful, and I'll start looking to see how many photos I missed, because I'm sure I missed a ton of photos. Everyone's saying thank you, and I'll pass these on to you. I'll stay in touch with you, because, like I said, I know I'm going to end up for realizing I forgot a whole bunch of questions, and maybe here in a few weeks or a month or what have you, whenever you get some free time, we can have you back on if everybody'd like that and if you'd like that.
Oh, no problem.
Excellent. All righty. Well, guys, we're going to shut her down, and I hope everyone has a good day. And again, thank you, Mr. Mike, for joining us. It's been absolutely wonderful to hear from you and get your history. It's an honor to speak to you.
Thank you. Welcome home.
Yeah, that's thank you for your service, and thank you for all you did and continue to do by helping me keep this history straight. So thank you.
All right.